there's a secret buried inside your DNA, so chilling it suggests we probably shouldn't even exist. Imagine a timeline where humans vanish, not because of war or alien invasion, but because Mother Nature almost deleted us, twice. Picture every person on Earth packed into a high school football field and then imagine that's it. Everyone else? Gone. Not fiction. This very nearly happened, and no one told you. Today, we're 8 billion strong, arguing on social media, clogging up traffic, and making dance videos. But if you zoom out far enough, and I mean way out, you'll discover that we were once just a handful of survivors clinging to life in a world that wanted us dead. Not just once, twice. And this isn't a story you'll find in bones buried under the sand. It's etched into our genes, written in the molecular scars left behind by two of the most terrifying population crashes in human history. Each time it wasn't just bad weather or a rough winter. These were world-ending disasters that shrunk our population to the size of a small town or maybe even a single street. And yet, somehow, some way, our ancestors made it through. The odds were so stacked against them, it's basically a biological miracle you're here watching this video. So, what exactly happened during those dark epochs? How close did we come to becoming a weird footnote in evolution's junk drawer? And more importantly, could it happen again? Let's pull back the curtain on the forgotten pages of human history where extinction wasn't just a scary bedtime story. It was Tuesday. To understand what almost wiped us out, you first need to know about one of evolution's nastiest curveballs, the population bottleneck. Think of it like playing Russian roulette with your species. It happens when the population drops so drastically that nearly all genetic variety is lost. Whoever's left, they've got to rebuild the entire species from a dangerously tiny genetic toolkit. Why is that terrifying? Because genetic diversity isn't just a fun biology word, it's your species' survival cheat code. It's what gives some individuals a better shot when disease, disasters, or angry saber-toothed cats come knocking. Without it, one flu virus could be game over. That's why animal conservationists today freak out over bottlenecks. Just look at cheetahs, gorgeous animals. But thanks to a past bottleneck, their genetic diversity is so low that they're basically all half clones. One new virus, and it's lights out for the whole species. And here's the twist. We humans didn't just face this nightmare once, we went through it twice. 2 extinction-level events. The first one? So ancient, it happened before Homo sapiens even showed up. That's how long we've been cheating death. To see how bad it really was, meet the Wrangler Island mammoths. After their mainland cousins went extinct around 10,000 years ago, a tiny group of mammoths kept surviving on a freezing island near Siberia. At first, they held on with just 300 individuals. But over time, their DNA became a biological minefield. Inbreeding led to bizarre mutations. Some lost their ability to smell properly, others couldn't reproduce well. Eventually, the entire population collapsed like a dying Wi-Fi signal, and boom, they were gone. Now, take that same scenario and imagine it with humans. Because modern genetics is now screaming at us that we also experience 2 horrifying near-death scenarios. Moments in history where one bad harvest or one freak volcano could have meant the end of humanity. So how close did we really get? Let's rewind the genetic clock. The first disaster struck nearly 900,000 years ago. Back then, our ancestors weren't even us yet. No Homo sapiens, just some very distant cousins trying not to die in a brutally changing world. Fast forward to 2023, when a groundbreaking study used a powerful new method called FitCoal to uncover the truth. No, they didn't dig up million-year-old skeletons, they did something smarter. They analyzed the DNA of over 3,000 modern humans. By tracking tiny genetic echoes, they reverse-engineered the population of our ancient forebears. And what they found was nothing short of mind-blowing. Between 930,000 and 813,000 years ago, the human lineage slammed into a brick wall. Population crash. Big time. At the worst point, there may have been only about 1,280 individuals left. Total. On Earth. That's not a city, that's a college dorm, or a Costco on a slow Tuesday. And this wasn't some temporary crisis. Humanity's population stayed critically low for over 100,000 years. That's not a blip. That's an entire chapter of our existence spent skating along the edge of total annihilation. And you might be wondering, how on earth can we possibly know what happened a million years ago? Well, here's where it gets even crazier. It turns out DNA has a memoria, long, quiet, stubborn memory. It doesn't just pass down eye color and lactose intolerance, it also carries the footprints of survival. Scientists have figured out how to read those footprints by tracking how certain gene variants move and mutate through time. It's like dendrochronology, but instead of tree rings, they're decoding the life story of humanity hidden inside your chromosomes. And thanks to tools like FitCol, those stories are now clearer than ever. What's eerie is that the genetic evidence syncs up with something else, a bizarre gap in the fossil record. Between 950,000 and 650,000 years ago, it's like humans vanished. Almost no remains, no signs of life. Not because scientists aren't digging in the right place, because there may not have been anyone left to leave bones behind. So, what pulled the plug on humanity 1.0? The most likely villain, climate meltdown. We're talking about the early to mid-Pleistocene transition, a time when Earth hit the reset button. Temperatures nosedived, glaciers spread like unpaid parking fines, oceans cooled, droughts ran rampant, and ecosystems simply collapsed. It was like Earth had decided to start playing on hard mode, and early humans weren't exactly built for it. One of the major suspects behind this planet-wide catastrophe is the Atlantic Meridional Overturning Circulationer, as scientists like to call it, the climate's control panel. When this massive ocean current system breaks down, Earth's weather gets turbo weird. It's been blamed for the abrupt cold snap during the Younger Dryas, and now it's also a top suspect for this ancient icebox disaster. Now picture our early ancestors, not yet masters of fire, wandering through a world that had suddenly turned into a frozen wasteland. They didn't just have to survive predators and hunger, they had to outlive the planet itself. For more than 100,000 years, fewer than 1,300 humans, if you can even call them that, yet managed to hang on, and during that bleak window, something weird happened. Inside our DNA, a fusion occurred. No, not a Dragon Ball Z kind, a literal chromosome fusion. While chimpanzees and gorillas still rock 48 chromosomes, modern humans only have 46. Why? Because two ancient chromosomes fused together into what we now call human chromosome 2. It's one of the main genetic markers that separates us from the rest of the great apes. And the timing of this chromosomal remix? Right around the time of the Great Bottleneck. Could this event have helped spark the beginning of a new species, a path that eventually led to us? Some scientists believe it just might have. Not only were our numbers collapsing, but our very biology was being reprogrammed. Out of near-extinction came innovation, whether by luck, mutation, or desperation. Now, here's the strange irony. We look back at ancient humans with admiration, how they adapted, how they struggled, how they didn't just cave in. Meanwhile, today, people are stuck staring at screens, burning out in jobs that could be replaced by a toaster with Wi-Fi in a few years. Life still feels like a survival game, except the boss level is capitalism, and your health bar is your mental energy. But here's what's wild: evolution doesn't always march forward gently. Sometimes it jumps, it mutates, it survives by becoming something new. In other species, bottlenecks have been known to cause sudden evolutionary pivots. The survivors aren't just a smaller group, they're a different group. The same may have happened to us. That ancient, brutal climate bottleneck might not have just threatened to wipe us out. It might have been the catalyst that set Homo sapiens on the evolutionary map. By the time our numbers started creeping back up around 813,000 years ago, the damage had been done. Or maybe the upgrade had been installed. Either way, the survivors were no longer the same. They were genetically distinct, hardened, rewritten by disaster. And those ancient scars? They didn't fade. They're still in you, in me, in all of Uscos of a time when the human story very nearly ended before it began. Now let's fast forward to a more familiar erase the rise of Homo sapiens, the stars of this whole absurd survival drama. Roughly 300,000 years ago, modern humans showed up in Africa. They grew in number, got curious, and eventually did what humans do best, got restless. That restlessness, our need to explore, to push boundaries, would soon trigger the second near-extinction event. For years, scientists pinned the blame on a single villain, the Toba supervolcano in present-day Sumatra. When it erupted around 74,000 years ago, it didn't just throw a tantrum, it blew up with the force of 10,000 Mount Street Helens. The so-called Toba catastrophe hypothesis claimed that this volcanic inferno darkened the skies, cooled the earth, and nearly wiped out the fledgling human species. But here's the thing. The DNA doesn't back that story up. When scientists analyzed global genetic data, they found no sharp drop in diversity around that time. And in places like East Africa, the climate evidence shows no volcanic apocalypse. So the eruption may have been dramatic, but it probably wasn't the executioner. Instead, the real threat came creeping in slowly. Between 100,000 and 50,000 years ago, something else was happening. Something quieter, but far more dangerous. Bands of Homo sapiens began trickling out of Africa. Not one grand exodus, more like a series of awkward stumbles into the unknown. Some attempts failed, some groups vanished, but a few stuck the landing. And that's where the second bottleneck strikes. These early human pioneers didn't take a big crowd with them. They weren't genetic Noah's Arks. They were tiny, under-equipped squads with DNA diversity so low it makes cheetahs look like genetic jackpots. Studies of mitochondrial and Y-chromosomal DNA from 51 global populations show just how dicey it was. The founding population that gave rise to all non-Africans today may have been as small as 25 women and 15 men. 40 people, that's it. 40 humans wandering into strange lands, facing predators, diseases, and climates they'd never seen, all with genetic toolkits about as varied as a pack of crayons with 3 colors. And yet, those few people became the ancestors of every non-African human alive today. Every language, every culture, every TikTok, dance traced back to them. It's hard to overstate how insane this gamble was. One bad flu, one awful winter, and that entire lineage could have disappeared into oblivion. Some did, but others through luck, stubbornness, or sheer refusal to die survived. They spread across the globe, carrying with them a gene pool so tight it squeaked. And that's why, even now, the greatest genetic diversity on Earth is still in Africa, where humans first emerged and where the population never suffered that second, brutal contraction. To see just how rare our survival was, look no further than our long-lost cousins, the Neanderthals. These guys weren't dumb brutes. They were smart, adapted to the Ice Age, incredible hunters, and pretty decent at crafting tools. They thrived across Europe and Western Asia for hundreds of thousands of years. We even mingled with them. A little too much, in fact, because their DNA is still hanging out in most of us. But here's the sad twist. While we spread, they shrank. Neanderthal DNA reveals the signs of a slow-motion collapse, low genetic diversity, isolated groups, inbreeding gone wrong. A 2019 study of 13 Neanderthal skeletons uncovered rare birth defects, evidence that their gene pool was turning into a biological echo chamber. Another analysis of their inner ear anatomy confirmed the same thing. Their diversity was draining away like water from a cracked bucket. They didn't get wiped out in some sudden, Hollywood-style extinction event. There was no asteroid or zombie outbreak. Instead, they dwindled. Trapped in a shrinking loop of genetic fragility, one failed generation at a time. They were stuck in a demographic death spiral and there was no escape hatch. But here's the question that keeps scientists up at night. Why did we survive when they didn't? Both humans and Neanderthals faced near-fatal bottlenecks. Both endured savage Ice Age winters and relentless environmental pressures. But Homo sapiens had one priceless edge: Africa. When small migration bands dared to push into the harsh wilds of Eurasia, a massive, genetically diverse population still thrived back home. Africa acted like a living backup drive ready to refresh numbers, fuel adaptation, and inject resilience. Neanderthals had no such safety net. They were locked inside Europe's frozen grip, isolated and surrounded by glaciers. No warm refuge, no population buffer, no reinforcements. In the end, it wasn't the sharpest spear, the biggest brain, or even the most complex language that made the difference. It was diversity, the unstoppable march of modern humanity. It's not built on strength, it's built on narrow escapes. The first near death, nearly 1 million years ago, our ancestors were reduced to fewer than 1,300 people, barely enough to start a group chat. Then, 50,000 years ago, tiny squads of Homo sapiens risked everything, stepping out of Africa with next to nothing, just their wits, their courage, and some tragically limited genetic variation. And somehow, we made it. But make no mistake, we survived barely. What does that teach us? That numbers matter, but what matters more is variety, diversity. Not just how many of us are here, but how many different versions of us exist. Because extinction isn't always about how many sometimes. It's about how prepared. Today, we face threats that would have baffled ancient humans. They worried about saber-toothed cats. We worry about nuclear weapons, AI-induced unemployment, viral pandemics, runaway climate disasters. These aren't meteors or glaciers. These are problems we made ourselves. And even though we now number in the billions, we could still be vulnerable. A true bottleneck doesn't need a global wipeout, it just needs the wrong kind of survival. The kind where diversity vanishes and every future option starts to look the same. Could it happen again? It's not some science fiction fantasy. It's entirely possible. Maybe that's why these ancient bottlenecks hit so hard. Because their ghosts still linger in our cells, in our behavior, in the quiet paranoia that whispers, "We've almost lost it all before." We're a species forged in disaster, not by peace, but by pressure, by being cornered and clawing our way back from the brink. And in that sense, we are the lucky ones. Because not every human species made it. Neanderthals, Denislavs, Homo erectoids, every one of them stared down the same gauntlet, and every one of them eventually faded. Why did we endure? Part of it was geography. Africa's size and richness gave our ancestors a diversity buffer, but it was more than that. It was the choice to move, to connect, to share. Because when tribes isolate, they shrink. When they merge, they grow stronger. It wasn't the sharpest stone blade that saved Usit, was the hand that passed it to another tribe. That's our true superpower, connection. And today, we live on the far side of those ancient genetic minefields. Every single person alive is descended from the survivors of those silent apocalypses, from the 1,280 who outlived the Great Crash, from the bold few who stepped off the African continent with little more than a dream and stubborn DNA, from those who refused to let the flame go out. So, the next time you hear someone talking about endangered species, shrinking gene pools, or collapsing ecosystems, remember, we've been there, and the decisions we make now, they're not just about today. They're going to shape the stories being told 100,000 years from now, if we're lucky enough to still be telling them. If you've stuck around this long, congratulations, you're one of the story's survivors. And the good news? There are plenty more chapters buried in time, waiting to be uncovered. So hit that like, smash that subscribe, and join me as we piece together the story of USONA unbelievable survival at a time. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.